So, Kathy, do you want to set some kind of intention or really direction with what answers you want? And anyone in the audience, I guess, can ask too.
Yeah, so for me, being here, like the challenge is mainly the quality of food, water, and yeah, that would be like my main concern. Like also for my son, because well, like in the TIFA course, like we talked about like how fast like the bad stuff can come in your skin, like 25 seconds. And I'm just thinking about it, like even when I shower or like all those little things that when it comes to health, that I want to know how to have a better access to clean water or organic fruits and produce and everything. So that would be, yeah.
Awesome. Super, super easy. So we can do like practical Bali. Of course, I think some like more meta commentary will always come through me as it does. But I can give you those practical tips, no problem. In terms of water and showering and what Kathy's referring to, she is one of the newly enrolled Institute for Aliveness students in our 18-month program. So she's diving into week 2. And yes, it does take about 26 seconds for any kind of toxicity to go through the porous barrier of the skin and be absorbed into the bloodstream. And so when we're talking about the runoff and the waste runoff in places like Bali, which were very much experimental ground in the 1970s green revolution, which sounds like a good thing, but was not at all. It was in the late 60s and the early 70s that specifically American companies decided to have a petrochemical revolution whereby they put pesticides and fertilizers and herbicides all over industrial parts of the world. This was the precursor to the genetic modification movement that gave birth to companies like Cargill and Monsanto, which genetically modifies seeds and have tremendous amounts of chemicals that are sprayed on them and then wash over everything, kill everything else except for the genetically modified seed and the plant that sprouts from it. And so in the 1970s, as Bali became an experimental ground for a lot of toxic waste runoff, all of the rice fields, not all, but most of the rice fields that were once heirloom, indigenous, gorgeous varieties of black and red and purple rices, all of a sudden became a genetically modified variety of white rice. And so now where you used to have a rice field that was abundant, and I did my master's field research in anthropology in Bali, looking at food and food systems, how they had changed over 3 generations. And it's very, very, very clear that there was a tremendous change. And that was a big part of my research, was to prove that. But I would hear stories of people who were even, 40, 50 years old. And this was already a decade ago when I did my master's field research, about them telling me when they were growing up, there were eels and fish in the rice fields, right? There were berries growing on the side of the rice fields. There was this whole ecosystem which no longer exists. And so as they would go out and, be responsible for either tending to the rice fields or picking berries or whatever, they would always also fish and play with the eels and whatever it was. There was much more life. And then in the early 70s, all the way through the 80s, when the Green Revolution swept through the world, it hit Asia and it hit Indonesia very hard. And so there is a water table that is full of toxicity now from 40 years of poison. And so anything that you see in Bali that's marked organic is not actually organic. When you look at organic certifiers, it has to be a good period of 10 years before you can consider it organic. The soil has to have no chemicals. The water table has to be free of chemicals for 10 years before you can consider it organic. And so this is something that Megan Pappenheim, who owns the Bali Spirit Network, and who I worked with when I was working there, she has been kind of championing, along with many other people. Her phrase is organically inspired, because Bali is what would be called an in-transition society. It's in that 10-year bubble where it's not actually organic yet. There are people like Ben Ripple, who owns Big Tree Farm. So these are good names to write down. Big Tree Farms gives life to Island Organics, which is a organic vegetable delivery service. At least 1 or 2 other ones have popped up, and I would highly recommend, if you're living in Bali, that you should be getting organic vegetables delivered to your door 2 to 3 times a week. Yeah, because it costs the same as you would pay pretty much in a store. The quality is so much higher, and you're supporting an industry of regeneration in the land. And Ben Ripple and his wife Blair, which I hope Blair watches this, I know she follows on Instagram, have dedicated the last 35 years of their life to transforming the Indonesian farming system. And their work is incredibly inspiring. Ben was a lifesaver. He was the last interview I did for my master's field research and really put everything together. And that quality of work, along with people like Har, you might know Har's Garden. He's up one of the rice field roads in Ubud. I forget exactly which one, but he's this super cool Rasta Indonesian who takes a very wild style of permaculture, where he just kind of goes out into his fields, throws whatever he throws, allows everything to die and compost on the land, and you see a tremendous abundance. And you can go to Har's Garden on Thursdays. He had tours. I'm not sure if he still does. I'm guessing he probably does. You can just stop by whenever and check it out. Search Google Maps, HAR''S Garden. You can get a giant bag of greens for next to nothing, like maybe €1. And there you are. And you have the freshest, most organic, amazing food. And again, this is in transition. I think I would probably be comfortable to say that Har's Garden is up towards that 10-year mark. So it is hopefully almost able to be called organic, but the nature of farming in a collective zone is that you might be great, but your neighbors are spraying DDT or whatever it is. We still have that in certain parts of India. So there's always kind of checks and balances, and you're always making compromises. But thankfully in Bali, there are ways to at least eat organically. There are certain things you're going to want to stay away from. For example, the soy. A lot of the soy, believe it or not, in Indonesia is shipped in from the US. Yeah, and more than 80% of all soy is genetically modified. So it's something that you'll, unless it's organic, and even then, so yeah. And tempeh as well is pretty much fungi, like it's mold. Yeah, it's not something that you necessarily want to be eating, but that's just my aside. Enjoy it for 1 or 2 times and see how it makes you feel, and be honest with it. But in terms of the water, which there's 2 parts of this, Kathy, you were talking about the shower water, and then you were also talking about drinking water. And so in terms of shower water, anywhere you are in the world, so that's for all of you watching in different parts of the world as well, it will be of crucial importance to filter your shower water. And so some of you might remember Adam, who worked with us and was a big inspirator to the initiation. In fact, it wouldn't exist without him. Because when I left my career, he said, Andy, you can leave everything else, you can't leave this. And that's why we still have an online fasting program every month. Adam used to carry around the world with him a shower head that you could unhinge or unscrew any shower head that you're at, any hotel, any guest house, wherever you are, and put this in. And it was a mixed filter. I think it was a clay filter, a charcoal filter, and maybe a ceramic filter is the last filter. And so it would filter through pressure from the water and then spray out through a shower head. And you can get it online, Alibaba, like from China. It's not difficult to get one of these filters today. A really simple filter can make a world of difference for your shower. If you are living in a place and you own your house, you could look at investing in an actual central water filter system. So it's going to filter your drinking water as well as your shower water. And then I know, Kathy, you had also asked for colonics and enemas and things like that. And it's a very important thing to think about. When we look at, for example, doing enemas in Bali, when I held the detox retreats, we would always use bottled drinking water. So you want to get some kind of drinking water, heat it to body temperature, and then use that to put up your bum. Yeah, you don't necessarily want to put anything into the digestive tract the other way that you wouldn't drink. For all colonic systems, as well as the systems that I set up all over Bali in the yoga barn, we use a triple filter system that uses charcoal, carbon block, and then UV light. And so that filtration system is, again, enough to take out the petrochemicals. What you don't have, luckily in Bali, is a municipal water processing system. And that's what's going to be a big issue for those of you living in cities around the world, because the municipal water processing systems, as I put on the Instagram story a few days ago, maybe you watched it, they haven't been updated since the 1980s. But what has been updated since the 1980s are pharmaceuticals and nanoparticles. And so we have lots of runoff of the kid next door's Ritalin or the woman down the street's hormone replacement therapy, and you're drinking that in your city tap water. So it's important to be aware for whomever you are, wherever you are living in the world. But in Bali, definitely for drinking water, as far as that goes, it's definitely important to be having reverse osmosis, because that's going to be an extreme filtration, because it is groundwater that's being filtered, right? Even if it's spring water. And I've had wonderful spring water. You can get direct to door delivery of spring water. Kathy, I can send you a number, or anyone else in Bali who's interested. Definitely get direct to door spring water. And I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's been too many years. There's Balian, which they had a great branding campaign. The water itself's not so great. It's okay. But there are spring companies that you can get, spring water companies delivered to your door. And that's for any of you living anywhere. Check it out. Otherwise, go to findaspring.com and see where there's a spring near you. Or if you know of a spring in your area, put it on the map at findaspring.com and add to that global brain trust of where we
can I say something?
Yeah.
Because down the street, there is actually like a spring water, and source. And then the guy that lived next door, he said that there is a doctor that came to do a test, and there is still like a bacteria in it. So
yeah. So whenever you have a spring water source, you're always going to want to see what's upstream. And if you're in kind of a semi-residential area, then my guess is that there's runoff. And especially because it's Indonesia is a less developed country. The sewage is not well articulated. And so you will have some kind of runoff, and it's not spring water that I would necessarily trust or drink. The spring water's up by less in the north of Bali. Things like this are much cleaner. They're in pristine environments. There's enough plant there to purify the water as it comes down. And that's very different than something running off through, because the subak system, which this is what anthropologically Bali is very famous for, it's the water pathways that you'll see running along the rice fields. It was originally the antidote to the free rider theory in academia, that was if something's a community shared resource, that people will inherently take advantage of it. And a lot of the work done by the International Study of the Commons, or Library of the Commons, and a beautiful academic who I worked with once called Eleanor Ostrom, was about kind of proving that it could be otherwise. And the subak system in Bali was some of this proof that people could live in harmony by sharing this common resource that no one can actually own, like water, until today, when companies like Nestle are, privatizing water. Nonetheless, I digress. The subak system originally was these canals that you would put like a moat in, you would close it, and then you would open it up when it was your turn for your rice field to get water. So the water would always be coming in. It would be flowing through the subaks in rainy season, obviously more than in dry season. And then when it was, Tuesday at 4 o'clock, or in Bali, you have 4 days of the week, right? Some weeks even have 3 days, some weeks have 5 days. It's the craziest calendar I've ever come across as an anthropologist anywhere in the world. So if you're in Bali, definitely spend time investing, sitting down with an elder Balinese person, because unfortunately the younger people just don't get it. They did not inherit so much of the indigenous knowledge and wisdom and rhythm of Agama Hindu and Balinese life. Nonetheless, when it was your Tuesday or your third day of the week at noon or whatever time, you would pull up your water moat and water would run through your property. And so this was written about anthropologically from the 60s all the way up to the 90s. And then things started changing, of course, in late stages of tourism coming into Bali. The Australians started coming in the 60s, that expanded to Europeans and Americans in the 70s and 80s. And then since the 80s, it's been well known as a tourist hotspot. And over the past 30-year study on, or 30 plus, of 3 generations of ethnic Balinese, and looking at the change in lifestyle and tourism was obviously the main factor. And so Kathy, for you as someone just moving there, and like, let's just, everyone can be honest. And I mean, Kathy, you yourself are an interesting ethnic case study, right? Being Vietnamese, but growing up in France, right? Yeah. And so like there's like an essence of non-nativity. And what we're seeing in Bali today is a different style of like neo-colonialism, where you have these foreigners from all over the world coming and kind of colonizing this island, not dissimilar to how the Javanese came from Java so long ago and took over this island of Bali and took over the indigenous people that were living there. And that is the only natural thing of human history. We migrate, just like any other species. We migrate, we go where there's abundance. And so there's a part of the neocolonialism which is a natural part of human evolution, and yet it's really important for us to just be honest and call it what it is. And so in that neocolonialism, the extraction of resources is something really, really important. But in Bali specifically, there's an experiment going on that has never happened anywhere in history before. And I have been traveling the world to more than 100 countries over the past 14, 15 years. And I've never seen anything like it, because in third world countries, right, or less developed countries like India or like anywhere, Mauritius, that's a little more developed, but in, I don't know, Peru or somewhere else, you wouldn't have money like you have in Bali. And yet in Bali, because of tourism and because, you know, the Indonesian currency in about 2011, 2012 really like crashed. And you have a tremendous amount of capital coming in from outside with an ability to buy because things are really cheap. Yeah. And decent quality as well, because it's kind of local and there's been a training of what foreigners would want. And so the local tourist economy is able to serve that. And so with this massive tourist influx, what I've seen out was how the culture and the sense of deeper rooted indigeneity of Balinese people knowing who they are and why they are kind of evaporated with a sense of tourist greed that came in, right? And so I would ask a lot of the younger people, what is this ceremony about, or why do you do this or whatever? And they say, go ask a priest, I don't know, right? And so of course, as an anthropologist, that breaks my heart. And yet it is what it is. And so how does that play into things? I mean, when I was saying it was an experiment, or it is an experiment that's not been seen anywhere in human history, you'll have a 5-year-old driving a very expensive dirt bike, you know? And in more developed countries where they can afford that, there's licenses and certain regulations where a 5-year-old can't drive a very expensive dirt bike. But in Bali, right, you have this just like completely hats off system that's very wealthy, very intentionally undereducated. And I'm not saying that education, classic education, is a good thing. It's just that versus kind of absence of education maybe isn't a good thing. It's just an experiment that's never been done before. And I, along with many other people who have lived there for a long time, have seen a new breed of greed kind of bubble up in Bali that has amongst the ethnic Balinese, because they now feel entitled to receive something for essentially sharing their land. And I'm sure that that's changed during COVID. So I would be interested to hear from people who have been there for years before and who are still there now. But there's lots to be said about the island. So we've covered food, we've covered water, we've covered a little bit of the anthropological history. What else, Kathy? What else is on your mind?
Yeah, no, I was just wondering because, you know, I'm doing the initiation now, and I was wondering if there's anywhere I could do which, for the, how do you say, the gravity wood method.
Yeah.
There is
cool.
it here?
Yeah, cool. So brilliant. Yes, there are still some of my students on the island. I set up gravity systems at the 2 biggest yoga studios in town, Radiantly Alive and the Yoga Barn. I've also helped assist with a few other systems on the island, but there's no one really working there that I would recommend. The only person that I would send people to is Anita, and I can connect you with her. She's amazing. She was one of my students in July 2016, and she's been practicing steadily ever since. And she also has a wonderful, wonderful air to her. And she actually cured herself of multiple sclerosis. She reversed her MS. And so it's quite impressive. So I can give you her contact details, and anyone else who wants Anita's contact details is welcome to write me. But I would recommend only her for colonics. And with a fast, like you're joining the initiation and we start the 22nd. I would recommend you have at least 3 Woods Method colonics, 1 before, 1 during, and 1 after the fast, or at least on the first day, the 3rd, 4th day, and then the 7th day, you could say. So that's wonderful. And then for enemas, I'm not sure if they're still importing them, but Liat at Down to Earth used to import, or actually she didn't even have to import them. There's a medical supply store. This is really the insider knowledge, Kathy. A medical supply store on Jalan Subrarto in Denpasar called Sanidata, Sanidata. If you get Gojek, which is an app that you should definitely have on your phone, anyone living anywhere in Indonesia needs to have Gojek. It's like the ultimate Uber Eats plus Uber maid plus Uber hairstylist. Like they'll deliver anything. You can maybe send a Gojek to go to Sanidata for 20,000 rupiah, which is about €1. You can buy an enema kit. So maybe buy a few of them and keep them. But otherwise they sold them marked up at Down to Earth. You could also get them there. You can get some.
I already have one.
She already has one. Look at that. So yeah, so you're gonna want to put filtered water heated to body temperature in there. And then you got your enemas, your colonics set. As for juice while you're fasting, and Bali is actually a really great, it's a horrible place to water fast, right? So the 4 or 5 years that I lived there, I mean, I'm a natural hygienist, so traditionally I'm a water faster and I would do long-term water fasting. And living in Bali actually completely changed things for me in a very unexpected way, because I started doing long-term juice feasting. Right. So I would be working and I would do 1 or 2 months on juice alone. And that's something that's quite easy in Bali because there's so much fresh pressed juice. Blair Ripple's in the house. Blair, I gave Big Tree and Island Organics a big shout out. Maybe I can have people write you. I love that. Yay. So anyway, so juice, you do want to definitely make sure that you're getting your juice made organically. And there are 3 spots in Penistonaan. I'm not sure which part you're living in, Kathy.
I'm in Pererenan right now, but
okay, so you're in Canggu, so that's south. It's not in Ubud. I'm speaking obviously more Ubud centric because that's where I lived. But if people are thinking about moving to Bali, I would actually recommend the Canggu area. I'm sure that you can find places, and you just ask them where they get their vegetables and how they're grown. And then they'll be able to make green juices for you. And my recommendation for that is to have it custom made, whether you're having, I mean, good things to juice in Bali are obviously cucumber, right? Some variety of spinach. What we usually use is an amaranth leaf, actually. So it's not the spinach family. But that, and then you can put in any other hard vegetable. I would stay away normally juicing anyway from beetroot or carrot. But you can juice creatively in Bali, like dragon fruit, believe it or not, buah naga juices really well. We have lots of oranges. And of course, this is kind of a toss up whether you'll be able to find those organic or not. But you just go places and talk to people and see what they have. And then once you find someone who is, you want to support, and they can make you juices for you. And it's pretty easy to juice fast or juice feast while you're in Bali, and allow the digestive system some rest. And yeah. What other questions do you have?
I'm just wondering, my son, he's 2.5 years, and I really don't know anymore what kind of food I should give him. Because I don't know, like, what would you suggest for a 2.5-year-old, because he doesn't want to eat anything since we're here.
Oh, wow. Yes. Well, I'm just going to acknowledge for your son the tremendous climate change, as well as the harshness of flying on airplanes today. And I have been traveling all throughout 2020 during COVID, and the airplanes affect me now more than they ever have. Whether that's some kind of disinfectants that's sprayed in the plane or what, it's very much an unknown, and every airline, every country is different. So your son is probably still metabolizing a lot of the toxicity and the radiation that he was exposed to through security and other things like that. I mean, he's only 2. And then the massive shock of going halfway around the world. So his desire not to eat is something that I think you should trust a little bit, rather than like see it blankly as something is wrong. Because of course the body, when it wants to heal, will not want to eat. And so trusting in his own innate wisdom and healing potential is significant. So that is something to be acknowledged, and you just give him cuddles, feed him in other ways, through sunshine, through hydration, through love, through presence, through play, whatever it is. And then as his system rebuilds through those forms of nourishment, all of the sudden, he will, get his appetite back. And when he does, I think anything that you would feed him anywhere else in the world, a certain quality of baby food. Unfortunately, the best coconut yogurt company in the entire world, which used to be in Bali, it was called Key for Life, no longer exists. But I can ask if you want, if their kefir cultures went anywhere else, but otherwise coconut yogurt's becoming more and more popular. And that would be something I would highly recommend you feed him. So some kind of probiotic, good food. You could feed him a little bit of sauerkraut water as well. But at all of the healthy stores that you're going to find for adults, you'll find things that are anything from smoothies to like a green soup or a kind of, I don't want to say pudding, but something like that, that you can throw in and start to integrate into his diet.
Okay.
Yeah, but start super simple: greens, above ground fruits and plants in their natural state, and or slightly steamed and cooked, and he'll know what he wants. Yeah. And I think you'll be, especially because you're in Tiva, you'll have enough wisdom and wits about you to know what's right and wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you think, like, everything that you talked about, you could send me a list of all the contact and everywhere I should
I want to go over a few more tips just while they're in my mind of things in Bali to watch out for when living a healthy lifestyle. A really important one is the kind of oils that the restaurants are cooking with that you're going to eat at. So there'll be all these wonderful foods, and there'll be all these health food places, and even vegan or even organic or this or that, and then they'll fry it in minyak kelapa, which is coconut palm oil. So it's palm oil, right? It's called or the oil of the coconut actual, right? The real one, the native to Bali, or minyak kelapa Bali. You can also ask what kind of sugar is in things. The word for sugar is gula. And so you say, is it gula pasir, which is table sugar? Or you can say, is it gula mera or gula asli Bali? So red sugar, yeah? Or sugar that's actual Balinese sugar, which would be coconut palm sugar. And so those are big things that, just like any other Asian country or less developed country, there's just a mindless throwing in of like, who cares what oil, or let's make it taste good and put sugar. And that's like sugar's put in smoothies in many parts of Asia, including Bali. And so you really have to be careful depending on where you're going. Don't assume that things are healthy just because they look healthy or that it's been advertised as healthy. And really the oil and the sugar are the two most important ingredients. And just like anywhere else in the world as well, it's super important to have high quality salt if salt is used. And so ask these questions just like you would in any restaurant. And you'll learn more about this in the Tiva course for sure, Kathy. But for anyone watching, those are things to be really aware of in Bali, because most places are using highly refined oil. If it's not coconut palm oil, then it's going to be soy oil or a highly processed sunflower oil or a vegetable oil, which is the cheapest oils on the market that day mixed together. And so it's not stuff that you want to have. Om Yoga Connection said, thank you. It would be lovely if this can be saved to IGTV. Yes, I will do that for you, my dear.
I have another question.
Yeah.
For if I need to make my own soap or things like that, like, is there anywhere I could go to buy all the product I need to make soap or my own product?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Well, I know we just had our DIY household stuff in Tifa, which is inspiring you. But Bali's the last place you need to make your own soap because there's so many great companies. I'll tell you first where you could also get supplies but buy soap. One of my favorites is Nadi's Herbal or Angelo's store. They're brothers and sisters, and they're up in Ubud. So what you can do. And Ubud is obviously, it's the heart of arts and culture, as well as the religious heart of Bali. And so it will have a lot more of the native things. In the south, from Kuta all the way through Seminyak, slightly up to Canggu, a lot of the indigenous lands were the first lands bought off around the coast. We're looking at in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. So a lot of the Balinese people who used to live there either fled to Denpasar to get more involved in the world of capitalism and have quasi-corporate jobs, or be employees in general, or they kind of fled to the rice fields inland. So you won't find as much of the traditional kind of native stuff there. You'll find it much more north if you go up to Bedugul in the mountains, or places like that. You'll find homemade goods and artisan products, but Ubud still has some of that. And the Nadi's Herbal family and Angelo's store is just up from Prima's restaurant, which I recommend everyone try. Dayu's, sorry, Prima's in Peniston, and you should also go see her because she's my Balinese surrogate mother. You can go and tell her that you're Andy's friend or Andy's student, and she'll get very excited and give you a big hug. So the Nadi's Herbal and Angelo's store, Nadi's Herbal, the sister goes and takes you on herb walks. So she'll take you to find the ingredients, not only to make your own herbal medicine, but also to have soap or make perfumes or whatever it is you want to do. So you can also go to workshops for that in Ubud. And then at Angelo's store, you'll be able to buy raw ingredients, anything from shea butter or cacao butter to a tremendous amount of essential oils that he presses himself. And so many other things, but that's really where I would send you. And anyone looking for souvenirs as well, that's the best place to go for sure. Yeah.
And can I ask you, because I was actually planning to move to Ubud, but why would you suggest to stay in Canggu then?
Because I'm gonna get in trouble. Should I get in trouble? I get in trouble. Yeah, I mean, Ubud is just the land of spiritual escapists and a lot of spiritual materialism. And you do see some of that bleeding down to Canggu, but it's just like, it's a force field of a lot of pain. And obviously I was directly kind of doctoring that for 4+ years. So I know it intimately. But in Canggu, there's a much more, and this is my own perception, so I take that that's not everyone's experience. In Canggu, with the energy of the sea able to come in and kind of sweep away all of the crazy energies that are flying around Bali anyway, in Canggu there is a much more progressive millennial entrepreneurial scene where it's like, yeah, okay, they want to live a purposeful life and have connection to spirit and eat good food and live a good life, and they want to do big things in the world, and that's something that I personally really value. So if you want to be like, you're the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time around, and so if you want to be surrounded by people who kind of live at a much more progressive or impactful speed, Canggu is going to offer that more than Ubud. Did you connect with Edward Dangerfield of Breathwork Bali, who's our TIFA faculty?
Before, but not since I'm here.
Okay, tell him you're there. Yeah, send
okay,
a message. Send a message. Let him know you're there. Yeah, Edward moved there in the fall of 2019, October 2019, the same month that I got rid of my house after 6 years and moved everything out of Bali. And I not only gave him a bunch of things, but I also was able to really kind of bring him in to hold this space of authenticity that I think I was leaving, because in Bali you see a lot of healers and practitioners who, bless them, I mean, they mean really well, but they necessarily haven't done their own work. And so that affects the space that they hold for other people. I mean, in terms of how they are as a channel or a healer, like that's not for me to judge, but just in terms of the ability to hold impactful space, there are very few people on the island who have done their work to a certain level to be able to have a quality of mastery. And so when Edward and I met, it was this beautiful, almost passing of a torch, and his programs, just like mine when I was there, shot up in success because there's a vibrational authenticity that comes. And so definitely check out Breathwork Bali and anything that Edward Dangerfield's doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Should we call it a day?
Yeah, not that I think of now. Maybe it will come up after. Now I'm good.
Yeah, if you or anyone else has questions, send me. I have a restaurant list. It's mostly Ubud, and I know a lot of new restaurants have popped up. But as I said, Dayu's Primas. These are foundational places, and they cook with real coconut oil. If you're in Ubud, go to Gutama and go see. I always forget her name. Down by Sacred Scoops, across the street, is some of the best jackfruit on the island. Jackfruit curry. Yeah, and there's a great avocado toast at one place in Canggu. I'm forgetting the name. You'll probably find it, but yeah.
If you can remember.
Yeah, I'll look on Happy Cow. Happy Cow had most places listed, so check out Happy Cow for sure. Okay. For anyone anywhere in the world, it's a map of many plant-based restaurants. But enjoy your time there, and we'll speak soon.
Yes. You're cutting off, but okay. Thank you so much for taking the time for this and all those precious information.
Yeah, my love, it's my super pleasure. I'm so happy to connect with you and to be able to pass on some Bali love. And let me know how it goes, and send any other questions you have my way, okay?
I will. And I see you tonight, no? I mean, tonight for me.
I mean, it's tomorrow morning for me, but yes.
I see you all day, every day now. I spend my life with you.
Very good.
Okay.
So I'll see you in a few hours.
Yes, thank you.
Ciao, love. Thanks for inspiring this.
Thank you.